Hello, this is Stéphane Treyvaud, and we are going to have a closer look today at the sitting posture in sitting meditation. I name the method that I've developed over many years of practice dynamic alignment for reasons that you will see soon. So, when I started the practice of meditation many years ago, the usual invitation is to sit straight, sit erect, maybe even to sit with your legs crossed in the cross-legged position. You're sometimes also told to hold the hands in a certain way, with the fingers in a certain way, and so on. And what happens, certainly happened to me, is that this posture was very unnatural. And then I would be told that, well, as you practice it over time, it will become natural, which it just never did. And to understand that, we have to honor the body's physiology. We have to honor the body's capabilities and limitations with regards to the tendons, the fascia, the muscles, the way that our body structurally and functionally works. And so, first of all, everybody is different. But certainly, there are some principles that apply, particularly, let's say, in our Western societies, that make meditation, make sitting much easier if we honor them. So here is this dynamic alignment method that really honors the physiology and the functionality of one's body. First of all, there's no a particular advantage or honor to sit cross-legged. And actually, for many people, sitting cross-legged is very uncomfortable. The other thing is that sitting cross-legged can actually cause long-term damage to your knees if you are not particularly flexible. So the Buddha sat cross-legged sometimes if you want to align yourself with the ideal, but there are also Buddhas that sit like I'm sitting here. So you can choose the way that you want to sit, either cross-legged or kneeling and sitting on your heels, or the way that I'm sitting, depending on what feels comfortable to you. Now I'm going to show you the sitting position on a chair, which is usually, let's say, the most accessible one for anyone. So the first thing is to realize that most people have limitations with regards to their flexibility. And particularly the flexibility in the hips, the knees, the lower back. And so a very important principle, when you want to sit in a way that is going to not only feel natural, but also help your meditation along, it is important to have your seat height such that your hips, as you can see here in my seat, your hips are higher than your knees. whether you sit cross-legged, whether you sit on your heels kneeling, or whether you sit on a chair like that, have your hips higher than your knees. You can see here that the axis of my thigh goes here downwards from the hip to the knee. Now, very flexible people can sit in a way where the hips and the knees are at the same height. And so you can theoretically sit cross-legged on the floor where knees and hips are on the same height. But you have to be extremely flexible for that. Most people are not. Now, how high should it be once you have this principle established of having your hip higher than your knee? Again, the higher you sit, the easier it is on your back if you have back issues, or if you're very inflexible. So for some people, I sometimes counsel them to add a pillow like this, and so they're sitting higher. So I'm getting a pillow here. So you can see here that I'm sitting much higher now. That position is easier on your back than if you sit lower, simply because it relieves the tensions in the tendons and the ligaments. So don't hesitate to really put as much height as you need in order to be able to sit without having a backache or without having your back strain. So anyway, I'm going to take this away because for me that is too high. And here I am now sitting, as you can see, with my hips slightly higher than the knees. So that's the first thing to pay attention to. Once you have established the seat height, how do you sit in a way that is stable, natural, and relaxed? The instruction to sit straight or to sit erect causes this kind of movement and this kind of attitude. And I'm going to exaggerate now. So it actually introduces a forcing and a tension. I'm supposed to sit straight and sit erect. So I'm exaggerating, but that's what it introduces. Now, mindfulness meditation is the opposite of that. It's never a forcing. It's never something that increases tension, but it is the opposite. It is an opening. It is a releasing. So how do we do that? Well, we are using a very different metaphor. And the metaphor we are using is the one of stacking the spine. So imagine a child playing with wooden blocks and building a tower. There's no effort involved. It just takes a block, puts it on top of the other. The only effort is in the kind of attentiveness with which the next block is put on the block before, so that it aligns properly and increases the stability of the tower the higher it gets. So we can apply the same principle with our spine. And so imagine being a child, putting one block on top of the other to build a tower. And here you can start by kind of hunching over like this and simply stack one vertebrae starting from the bottom, stack one vertebrae on top of the other. There's no effort, no forcing involved, let's say. And then at the end, stack your head on top of your spine in such a way that you can find a space where you engage the least amount of effort to have your spine stacked. So once you have stacked your spine in a first step like this, you can then experiment a little bit and lean a little bit too much forward. And then you see that when you do that, you have to strain more with the back muscles that hold you from falling forward. So that's a little bit too much forward. Then you can lean a little bit too much backwards, and so then you experience the opposite. So you go in between and find that zone where there's very little effort involved, where your spine is in as close a balance as possible. The same thing with left and right. And so you find that three-dimensional space in which your spine and the head on top of your spine are stacked with the least amount of effort. Now notice that I'm talking about a space, because this stacking of the spine will be constantly affected by the movements of the breath. The breathing movements slightly change the alignment of the spine. So you realize here we are calling this we are aligning the spine when we stack it like that. So here you are, and you notice that as you are aligning like that, first of all, you're always playing around with that space where there is the least amount of effort. So it's not anything static or rigid. It's dynamic. So that's why I'm calling it dynamic alignment. So that's one thing. The other thing is that even when it is relatively still and aligned, the movements of the breathing, they affect that alignment. So the alignment will be dynamically, slightly moving all the time. And then, of course, there's on top of that a very minute movement that comes from the circulation of the cerebrospinal fluid, but that's minute, that also affects the movements of the spine. So here you are in that first step of aligning of the spine. Now, you're going to notice that when you align like this without forcing, you're going to notice, particularly if you are used to having more of a hunched over posture like this, you're going to notice that when you align like this, even if you are not straight, because your alignment might be something more like this, that might be your alignment at this point. In other words, your way of stacking the vertebrae in the most effortless way. It's it's something that is really dependent on your nature and the body that you are. So as you are working with this alignment, you might actually notice that when you are in as balanced an alignment as you can, that some muscles work more than others. Usually, for most people, it's going to be that when you are aligning like that, the muscles that stretch the spine backwards have to start to work more, and the muscles that are in front of the spine, they have to start to work less. So what does that imply? It implies that as we keep practicing this alignment over time, what happens is that the functionality between the agonists and the antagonists, that's how we call the way that the muscles communicate with each other. You have the agonist and the antagonist. So one muscle contract, well, the opposite muscle has to release. So we come to this practice, usually, or most people come to this practice with conditioned imbalances, false postures. I'm exaggerating now again, and let's say, postures like this, where over time the front muscles have learned to work too much and the back muscles have learned to not work enough. And so we are out of balance. So as we practice this dynamic alignment, over time, what happens, because we are bringing awareness and attention into our work, what happens is that very slowly, the muscles at the back notice, oh, in order to align in the most effortless way possible, I need to learn to work more. And the ones in the front, they learn to work less. And so you have a harmonization, an integration that occurs. You have the muscles that rebalance themselves so that they each do the appropriate amount of work. So that is this posture. Now, as I said before, this alignment is dynamic. So there's always going to be, even if from the outside it looks like I'm not moving, when you are an experienced meditator, they still find movements of the spine that are going on all the time. So what I say, to use an important metaphor here, we are not sitting here like a telephone pole. No, we are sitting more like a hollow bamboo in the wind. So now, I mentioned before that this alignment is affected by breathing. So if you look at it more closely, you're going to see that the out-breath is an opportunity to release, with the force of gravity, to release down into your seat, into your feet, into the earth. So that's the out-breath. And the in-breath is a receiving, expanding, and activating again, and opening. So if you look at the effects of the breathing on our alignment, you're going to see that the out-breath is an opportunity when you notice tensions to just let them go. Let them go with the out breath. Let them release down into your seat, into your feet, into, into the floor, into the earth. By the way, you don't see that here, but my feet are flat on the floor. That's important. You are stable and have good contact with the floor. So let me exaggerate so that you can see it. What happens when I'm sitting here and I notice a tension during the in-breath, and then during the out-breath I release the tension? What might happen is that as you're releasing the tension, there will be a change in your alignment, and it might fall into a slight misalignment. So when that happens, use the in-breath as an opportunity again to restack your spine, to find that sweet spot, that Goldilocks spot of most effortlessness as you stack your spine and your head on top of your spine. And so you can see now the full dynamism of this alignment, how the spine is always like a hollow bamboo in the wind. It is always adjusting and aligning as we sit like that. Now, let's go to the last step in the alignment process. So we have the seat height. That's how you start. Second, the stacking of the spine. Then the dynamic alignment process. And finally, and that's very important, you release control of your limbs. So let's take a step back for a moment. When you first align, you might want to start by having your arms simply hang to the side like this. And so, you do your stacking and you do that. And then when you have found that sweet spot, all you do without moving your upper arms, you simply bend the arm in the elbow and you let the hand fall on your thigh wherever it falls. And that's it. That's a very natural way of placing your hand. Now, I'm going to mention it here. Some people may have seen this posture also, which is also a very natural and very beautiful way to hold your hands. I'm going to show you here closer. The right hand is inside the left hand, and the two thumbs slightly touch each other. The right hand is the left brain, is symbolically the masculine. The left hand is the right brain, it's symbolically feminine. So the masculine enters the feminine, rests in the feminine. So here, and then you place these hands in front of your lower belly, just above the pubic bone, like that. So that's another way that you can hold it. So let's get back now to this one here. So here I am. And now comes a very important instruction. You relinquish control of your limbs. What does that mean? as you know, you have control of your limbs. You can move your hand, you can move your feet, you can move your toes, and so on. Huh? So for the purpose of sitting practice, you relinquish control of your limbs. In other words, no matter what happens internally, no matter what happens with the spine and with your meditation, your limbs do not move. Your toes don't move, your fingers don't move, your feet don't move, your hands don't move, your legs don't move, your arms don't move. You totally relinquish control over them. With beginner meditators, I see a lot, people who do their alignment and they start meditating, and after 3 minutes, and so on. And they don't even notice that all these movements happen. So why do we include that important instruction of consciously relinquishing control of your limbs? It is because movements of our limbs are used by this organism that we are as a way of avoiding unpleasant, subjective, internal experiences, be it physical experiences, somatic experiences, or emotional, psychological experiences. We use movement as a way of avoiding it. And that's why when we're restless, we're constantly moving, constantly on the go doing things. So this is the last instruction of the dynamic alignment. You consciously relinquish control of your limbs. So having said that, notice that the dynamism of the spine continues while you relinquish control. By the way, you see here also the instruction. I am not saying don't move your limbs, which would again introduce a kind of a forcing. I'm exaggerating now, but it's like, okay, I'm not moving my limbs, huh? No, you relinquish control. In other words, it's as if you didn't control them anymore. You are not moving them anymore. What happens, what I wanted to say is that while you relinquish control of your limbs, you continue to sit like a hollow bamboo in the wind. And the dynamism of the stacking of the spine and the head on top of the spine continues. Now, the question is, so when you relinquish control of your limbs, you're going to see that the internal subjective experiences are going to be heightened. It's going to really surface much faster. And of course, mindfulness meditation, then it's all about penetrating what limb movement would obfuscate, would hide, penetrating the depth of what's going on in your mind with your awareness and your attention for the purpose of integration. And that's the topic of a whole other video. Last point. This whole business with alignment here. Where is your attention? The focus of your attention are the somatic sensations around the process of alignment. So your attention is in your body, in the somatic sensations around the pelvis, the spine, the head on top of the spine, the sensations of slight movement, adjusting, the sensations of dynamic sitting, and the way that the breath affects your alignment, and the way that you keep realigning with every in-breath after having released tensions in the out-breath. So your attention is in the somatic sensations around the spine. That's where you focus your attention. So that is all for this video now on dynamic alignment. Watch my other videos on attention itself, on the breathing, and all these things that belong to what makes a mindfulness practice successful. Thank you for listening.